So in the last few days, Christopher Nolan has made some comments which has got fans anticipating what his next film could actually be. There's obviously many different approaches which he could take, but it's interesting nonetheless to try and put our finger on what route the director will take. I thought it would be a good idea to address these comments and also make an extended video talking about some of the other genres of film that Christopher Nolan could tackle next, following the release of Tenet. Before I get into this discussion, if you want to see more on the director, his recent work and future projects, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoy this video, remember to give it a like rating. But without further ado, let's dive into what Christopher Nolan's next film could be. So after the release of Tenet, Christopher Nolan has many different options surrounding what genre of film he will put his stamp on. Now, in a recent interview for the release of a new book on the director, Tom Schoen discussed many topics including Tenet's box office, the filmmakers that inspired Nolan, and also his thoughts on a genre which he would like to approach. When asked about genres specifically, Nolan was quick to respond in saying that he would love to do a horror film and put his unique auteur stamp on it. This full interview, titled The Nolan Variations, was only available to watch during a live stream and was also a pay-per-view event, but those who did buy entries were lucky enough to hear the director's take on some really interesting talking points. Starting with the genre which Nolan referenced in this live event, the horror film is one that many Nolan fans, including myself, really want to see the director's approach on. It's a genre which Nolan has used aesthetically and tonally in various scenes within his previous films, such as with the tension of war in Dunkirk, the unpredictability and appearance of the Joker in The Dark Knight, and even the theme of fear, which is recurrent in much of his filmography. I think the hints at horror which Nolan has applied make him a great fit for a full-out psychological horror film, that, knowing Nolan, could even be based on something that many people around the world would connect to. Regardless of this, I think many people would turn up to any kind of approach on horror by Christopher Nolan, and it would sure be a shot at a bankable effort if, of course, theatres are more or fully operational by the time his next film releases. This is my first choice, and I would like to see how Nolan integrates his ever-changing use of time and core themes into a dramatic and emotional horror story. We'll have to see, but the director's own words during that recent interview get me excited to see what his take would be on that particular genre. But another approach which I would like to see Nolan's style attached to is a biography drama, or even something smaller along the lines of Memento or The Prestige. Now, I'm not entirely sure if Nolan would want to go smaller after consistently aiming for bigger budgeted films and projects which are large in scope, but one of the more recent efforts by the director included 2017's Dunkirk, which receded to an $100 million budget. Seeing Nolan limit himself and focus on a biographical piece of work would be interesting, as the director has always done a great job of mixing up his approaches to character. Whether it's ones with deep emotional constraints like in Memento, The Prestige, Interstellar or even Inception, or ones with less backstory such as in Dunkirk or Tenet. I've liked both of these approaches, but when witnessing the range of Nolan's work develop, I think a biography would be extremely intriguing, even if he went back to the filmmaking of his first few films by creating a puzzle box structure that would really engross various audience types. The director is known to surprise audiences and fans surrounding his approaches to genre and how he transitions from film to film, so I wouldn't be surprised if he took this route. A genre which is more likely to be crossed in the near future, however, is Nolan's fascination of the neo-noir. From Memento to the Dark Knight trilogy, and even areas of his other work, the director has loved adding elements of a neo-noir into his filmmaking. This ranges from focusing on the dark and light of powerful themes, choosing to shoot these moments in daylight, and the realism of grounding his characters within a relatable modern environment. By adapting a relatively monochromatic colour scheme, low-key lighting, and a contrast between light and dark, a film like The Dark Knight is a modern interpretation of the visual style of classic film noir, while appealing to the flamboyant visuals and commercialisation of the 21st century. This makes it a neo-noir, and Nolan's use of this genre really came into full effect with this film. It would be great to see him return to it since he has applied it in various projects, and from this, he could maybe attempt his own original film with even more of a Blade Runner feel. A Christopher Nolan film about the control of technology, or even our addiction to it, would be fascinating in this day and age. I do think he is starting to steer away into other genres, but it's definitely one that I would like to see at some point down the line. The last few choices that I think Nolan might consider but are more unlikely include either a return to breaking boundaries in the sci-fi genre or even a wildcard approach in the western genre. Since Nolan has come back to science fiction numerous times, it would be silly to state that he won't take that approach again. He has repeatedly stated in interviews that he has always liked the idea of science fiction, giving you that canvas to bring original and even relatable concepts into the same room, and as we have seen many great Nolan films within those boundaries, it would make sense that he does return to what he does best. However, like Interstellar and Tenet have proved, he does like to leave a gap in between these original takes, and it would fit in line with his recent work if he took a break from science fiction before returning to it in the future. On the other side of things, I would really like to see what a Christopher Nolan Western would look like. Now, I know that his brother Jonathan Nolan has worked on Westworld more recently, but for me, seeing Nolan focus specifically on a period of Western history would be unique and also challenging to see come to fruition. Think something along the lines of the famous Cormac McCarthy novel Blood Meridian, which was written by the same author who wrote No Country for Old Men. It would be a huge divergence from his other work, but in time, I do think that Nolan will tackle this genre as he seems to move between many different types of films and stories that we don't necessarily expect. Maybe not for his next film, but later down the line for sure. But that was my video discussing the different possibilities for Christopher Nolan's next film. I am interested to see what genre of film Nolan tackles after the release of Tenet, and how he will eventually put his stamp on that particular framework. I'm sure the director is currently working on an idea for this, and it will be intriguing to see how it all plays out. Again, I personally think that he may do a film within the horror genre, a biography, or even something smaller, but there's of course many options which he could take. We'll have to see, and hopefully his next film will release in the next 2 to 3 years like it normally does, given the circumstances with the pandemic and the theatre industry. But let me know what type of film you think Christopher Nolan will approach in the next few years, and whether you agree with some of the choices in this video. I'm also fascinated towards your opinions on what Nolan said about the horror genre, so don't forget to let me know in the comment section down below. For more content on Christopher Nolan's filmography and Tenet when it releases on Blu-ray and 4K in December, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.